Welcome to Click for IB Biology. We are in the topic of D3.3 homeostasis, and in this particular video we're going to be taking a look at an example of homeostasis, the regulation of blood sugar, and also the medical condition from misregulation, which is known as diabetes. There's a PDF of this presentation that's linked in down in the description below the video, where you will also find 10 questions on this topic along with answers, short answer questions, and you can use those to make sure you've understood the content of this particular part of the course. So let's apply the theory of homeostasis to blood sugar regulation. The fixed point around which we regulate blood sugar is approximately 90 milligrams per deciliter, which is here and represented by the horizontal axes. In the graph that I'm going to show, if the line goes above this here, we're increasing the blood sugar levels, and if we go below, then we are decreasing the blood sugar levels. The receptor of blood sugar levels is actually the pancreas, and is sensitive to both the high levels of blood sugars and the low levels of blood sugars. Now, the type of event which might increase your blood sugar level, so we would see the level rising above the fixed point like so, would be typical of having a meal and consuming food. And of course, the rise in this curve will be steeper should that food be high carbohydrate food or indeed heavy in sugar itself. And of course, we're primarily interested here in the molecule C6H12O6, which of course you will know well as glucose. So as the blood sugar levels of glucose increase, this is detected by the pancreas, and the particular cells within the pancreas are the beta cells. They're located in tissues known as the islets of Langerhans. So the beta cells will actually bring about the secretion of insulin. This relatively small protein hormone has 51 amino acids, and insulin is the subject of a number of aspects of the syllabus, and it would be well worth actually connecting and making links between the different parts of the syllabus in which we study insulin. So the pancreas and the beta cells are producing insulin, a hormone, in response to an increased level of blood sugar, blood glucose. And so this insulin then has a number of targets. Like any hormone, it's produced in the endocrine gland, and in this case that's the pancreas, and then it will have targets, and often, as in, you may well know this theory well, the hormone will travel through blood and may well actually have a number of different targets, as indeed is the case for insulin. So the liver as a target will result in the conversion of glucose into the polymer glycogen by the enzyme glycogen synthase. Insulin doesn't actually affect the uptake of glucose by the liver. That's actually a more or less passive process by some cell transporters called GULT2. So the real effect of insulin on the pancreas is the conversion of glucose to glycogen, the insoluble form, which is stored within the hepatocyte liver cells. On the other hand, another target could be the muscles or indeed the adipose tissue. Adipose, you might think of that as fat tissue. And here it has a different effect. The insulin actually introduces into the membranes of cells transporters called GLUT4, and these actively take up the insulin into the interior of the muscle cells and the adipose cells, where in the muscle cells it's stored as glycogen, but in the adipose tissue there's actually a conversion of this to a type of lipid. This would all influence our blood sugar levels to actually begin to fall. And so as we move back towards the regulated fixed point, of course, the body may very well be involved in respiration or other processes which consume the blood sugar, and it may actually fall below or overshoot the actual fixed point. And again, this is detected by the receptor, which once more is the pancreas and the islets of Langerhans, but this time the alpha cells. And the response of the alpha cell is to produce the hormone glucagon. And that's to both liver cells and muscle cells, but has no effect on adipose tissue. When the glucagon signal arrives at the liver and the muscle, the effect is for the glycogen stores to be broken down into glucose, and for that glucose to enter the bloodstream, which of course would then bring our blood sugar levels back up like so. Now in the diagram that I'm drawing here, you can see that the fluctuations from the regulated fixed point are lying within certain bounds. For blood sugar levels to exceed 126 milligrams, this is a condition known as hyperglycemia. And if blood sugar levels go below, that's called hypoglycemia. Now, both of these conditions will result in physiological stress to the individual. And indeed, hyperglycemia is extremely dangerous, and in some conditions can actually be fatal. And so the inability to regulate blood sugars, allowing them to deviate beyond these upper critical limits, is actually a disease which is known by the name of diabetes. And diabetes generally falls into two categories. There's type 1, sometimes known as T1D, and type 2, T2D, but they have very different causal factors. The type 1 diabetes is a genetic condition. It's inherited and leads to an autoimmune disease in which the beta cells of the pancreas degenerate. And of course, with the loss in the beta cells, people with this autoimmune inherited condition will have absolute insulin deficiency. And the only way to treat this is to have a life dependency on injections of insulin. And of course, students may well know that the genetically engineered version of human insulin is this one here called Humulin, with a number of manufacturers producing that. Alternatively, one might actually have the condition which is called type 2 diabetes. This is regarded as having a number of factors which lead to type 2 diabetes. These are quite complex, so we're only dealing with them in broad terms here. Lifestyle is obviously one of them, and this relates particularly to the diet of high carbohydrate or high glucose content meals, including drinks. There does seem to be a tendency, a susceptibility towards developing type 2 diabetes during life. And also there's also ethnicity seems to have an effect on the frequency with which diabetes occurs in the population. The students may be interested in pursuing the detail on those. With type 2 diabetes, which used to be called late onset diabetes, suggesting it occurred only later in life, this of course is no longer the case. Type 2 diabetes can be developed in children, particularly where they're susceptible, but very much where they have been subject to extreme high carbohydrate, high sugar diets. they develop a condition which is called insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is a feature of muscle cells and the adipose cells failing to produce the GLUT4 transporters. And so the blood sugar levels remain high. Of course, they're hyperglycemic with the failure of the GLUT4. Also, in both liver, muscle, and adipose, there's a fail of glycogenesis in these two tissues here. And of course, as previously mentioned, the conversion by fat cells to fat tissue can leave blood sugar in the circulation. There are, at extremes, this condition is also treated with humulin, where this is after prolonged type 2 diabetes. A more mild way of regulating this is the famous drug known as Metformin that was introduced in the 1950s. This is a low-cost and very, very effective method of increasing the insulin sensitivity once again. And in fact, metformin does seem to, in some data, have an effect on reducing obesity, which is part of the lifestyle causal issues in developing type 2 diabetes in the first instance. And so by taking these types of treatment, one can avoid the physiological impacts from prolonged diabetes, which include effects on vision, on the cardiovascular system, on heart functioning, and indeed on a number of organs' function. Ultimately, if untreated, can prove to be fatal. We're going on now to take a look at another homeostatic topic, that of thermoregulation. The link is on the left-hand side there. Please subscribe to the channel, it's always greatly appreciated, and the playlist is there for your convenience.